afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm your host, Paige Browning, with today's top stories. It's Thursday, June 18th. The buoys are back in town. The Trump administration is reversing course on its effort to shut down a network of ocean research stations in the Northwest and beyond. The National Science Foundation has halted the removal of floating observatories off 4 states and the coast of Greenland. John Ryan reports.
The reversal comes after the Senate voted unanimously Wednesday to block the Trump administration from dismantling the ocean monitoring system. The high-tech stations have been in place for a decade off Alaska, North Carolina, the Pacific Northwest, and Greenland. They monitor ocean conditions, including storms, temperatures, and oxygen levels. Their data is available in real time to the public. 6 observatories off the northwest coast had been quietly pulled from the sea starting last September. They've been sitting in a warehouse in Corvallis, Oregon. The Science Foundation now says those observatories will go back in the water after being serviced. John Ryan, KUOW News.
In other major stories today, a plan for 12th and Jackson. But first, Washington has its first wildfire death of the year. Officials say at least one person has died in the upriver fire in the Spokane area. 15 houses have been lost. Spokane Public Radio's Owen Henderson has more.
The Spokane County Sheriff's Office says deputies Tuesday conducted a welfare check on a resident who had refused to evacuate, but got no response. When investigators returned to the home yesterday, they found what appeared to be human remains inside the burned-out residence. Some evacuation orders are loosening as crews continue to strengthen the fire perimeter. Spokane County Fire District 9 officials say the areas closest to the fire remain at level 3 and residents should continue to stay away. The cause of the fire remains under investigation.
Reporter Owen Henderson. The upriver fire is now about 220 acres and is 10% contained. Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson's taking her first steps to improve the streets of Little Saigon. Previous mayors have tried to tackle visible drug dealing in the neighborhood, but those efforts saw limited success for short periods of time. KUOW caught up with Wilson today in person.
I don't think there's a silver bullet, so I don't want to overpromise. We know, and I think everyone in that neighborhood knows that these are, gnarly issues, longstanding issues. We are hopeful to make each day better than the last, right? We want to see really tangible improvement.
Wilson says police presence will expand in the neighborhood. Officers will explain to dealers and users and others selling stolen goods that that's no longer tolerated, and then book them into jail or diversion and treatment. Mayor Wilson also announced a little over $1 million from a street cleaning fund will go toward treatment and outreach. A couple stories in politics today. A group that wants to repeal the state's millionaire tax says it has gathered enough signatures to put the issue on the November ballot. Conservative group Let's Go Washington says it's collected more than 317,000 signatures so far, more than the requirement. The group contends that the nearly 10% tax on million-dollar earners will drive wealth out of the state. But tax supporters say the state stands to lose approximately $3 billion a year in future funding if it's repealed. We're hearing from the people who could or could not raise utility rates on whether they like Seattle City Light's plan to hike rates 10% next year. That would be the bump for regular customers, but data centers would pay a lot more. Joshua McNichols has more on this week's presentation to the City Council.
Power demand is rising. There are more electric cars and more data centers. Meanwhile, the aging grid needs investment and people keep stealing copper wires. So, residential bills will jump almost 10% in 2027 and then again in 2028. Leo Lamb chairs a volunteer review panel, and Kirsty Granger is the utilities CFO. Councilmember Rob Saka asked them,
what if we don't do this? What's the risk?
The biggest risk, we may run out of power. And if we run out of power, we get blackouts.
We don't want to be catastrophic, but we are talking about keeping the lights on.
Under the plan, new and expanding data centers will pay even higher rates, and they'll fund new infrastructure up front, sparing residents from those costs. Joshua McNichols, KUOW News.
We don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but we've got a new orca calf. The Center for Whale Research is celebrating the birth of a new southern resident orca calf between 1 and 3 months old. Dubbed L130, it was first spotted in the Salish Sea on Sunday. If it makes it, it'll have a friend. It's the second calf born to the L pod this year. At last check, there were 74 resident orcas left. Here on land, some labor updates to share. Unionized hotel employees who work at the Embassy Suites by Hilton near Lumen Field are now on strike. Union leaders say a total of 7,000 workers in Washington and Oregon started walking the picket lines early this morning. They're calling for more protections against federal immigration raids, along with more pay and year-round health coverage. And 111 bus drivers and dispatchers are losing their jobs just as the school year ends. Bus company First Student notified the state this week that the layoffs go into effect August 17th. The company says it's shutting down about 60% of its operations in South Park and Lake City. No reason was immediately given. Now, our feature story. Tonight, Mexico plays in its second World Cup match, this time against South Korea. Fans across Washington will be watching. About 1 in 10 people who live here are Mexican American. This year's World Cup also comes at a moment of tension for many Mexico fans and immigrants. Gustavo Sugrero has been speaking with some of those fans, and he sat down with KUOW's Kim Malcolm.
Gustavo, thanks for being here.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Well, you were at a watch party recently for Mexico's first game against South Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about the scene there?
There were plenty of watch parties being hosted all around the Puget Sound area, from neighborhood parties in the suburbs to workers watching the Mexico game during their lunch break. The watch party I went to was at the parking lot of a sports bar just a few steps away from where Seattle is hosting its own World Cup games. There was more than 500 people in the crowd, and by the time Mexico scored its second goal of the Cup, spirits were pretty high. Some of the people I met there kept offering me free beers, which I had to unfortunately turn down.
Oh.
Overall, it was a unifying moment for a lot of people. At the same time, though, a lot of people talked about having mixed emotions about coming out because of immigration politics. People kept pointing out how much they enjoyed seeing so many people from Mexico here, Mexican Americans, all coming out to see their team play. The Mexican-American community has grown a lot over the past few years in Washington and the Seattle area, they said. By census estimates, about 850,000 people in Washington state are Mexican-American.
So, Gustavo, what does the World Cup mean for some fans at this moment?
Well, Mexico often makes it to the World Cup, but they've never actually won. Here's how superfan Alfonso Martinez is putting it.
Honestly, semifinals minimum, final is what we expect. Really? Yeah, 100%.
Fans are also discovering that there's a much larger Mexican-American community here than they realized, comforting them, especially during a time when immigrants are under greater scrutiny.
Yeah, Gustavo, you've previously reported about ICE's planned security presence at the World Cup. Can you tell us a little more about ICE's role during these games and any concerns you've heard?
So ICE is part of the security mix at the games. Homeland Security officials said it's similar to what they do for any major sporting event like the Super Bowl. The agency monitors a variety of issues like human trafficking or counterfeit goods. So that increased presence of ICE makes some people nervous. Immigrants and worker groups in Seattle and around the country worry that it could lead to more arrests. Embassy Suite hotel workers just went on strike today in downtown Seattle, partly because they want management to tell them when immigration enforcement is on company property. Union groups have been holding Know Your Rights sessions for restaurant industry workers as well. As for the fans, most of the ones I spoke to are from satellite cities around Seattle. Think Renton, Kent, Burien. These cities are predominantly Latino neighborhoods and have been affected the most by ramped-up immigration enforcement in all of Washington state. Most of the people being arrested are from Mexico. Many of the fans here have family or friends that have been detained by immigration enforcement.
Yeah, and they still continue to show up for each other to celebrate together at these matches. Okay, Gustavo, let's talk about soccer and today's game, specifically Mexico versus South Korea. What is on the line?
So the winner for tonight's game secures their place in the knockout round. The loser isn't immediately out of the games, but it'll be much harder for them to stay in, and it'll depend on how the other games play out. But there's also this other thing. In 2018, during that World Cup, South Korea actually helped Mexico stay in the games when South Korea beat Germany. Even though it helped Mexico keep its head in the competition, South Korea's win wasn't enough to keep them in the games. Since then, there's been this deep appreciation for both of the teams that's filtered its way out of sports and into the cultures of both countries. One recent example is from earlier this year when Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum hosted South Korean K-pop supergroup BTS at El Palacio Nacional, or what's essentially considered the political seat of executive power in Mexico.
So where can folks go to watch these games?
Well, so the Seattle Center is hosting K-Fest, where they'll be watching the game there. There's also going to be a watch party hosted again at Victory Hall, just a few blocks away from the Seattle Stadium for Mexico fans. Both events are free. But generally, if you go to a Mexican or a Korean-owned business and they have a TV screen there, they're probably going to have the game on.
Gustavo Segrero talking with KUOW's Kim Malcolm. Next time on Seattle Now, it's Casual Friday and Juneteenth. Special guest host Phyllis Fletcher and our panel talk about whether the big corporations like Amazon and Walmart are invited to the Juneteenth cookout.
I did not know that we had a flag for Juneteenth.
I didn't either.
It's been around for 30 years and I had no idea. Oh, pretty cool.
They weren't at Walmart.
Okay.
Join us for that tomorrow morning. And that's all for today from the KUOW newsroom in Seattle. Our producer's Andy Hurst. I'm Paige Browning. Today's interview was produced by Shane Mailing. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you next time.